Welcome. I'm Dr. Layla Rack, Executive Managing Director of Strategic Advisory Services, a division of ALHI. Today, we are offering our members a new product, an in-depth webcast with one of our advisors. Our goal is to provide solutions to challenges you, our members, face, whether operational, sales, or leadership focused. This webcast, and one featuring ALHI's data guru, Armine Terrazon, Vice President of Sales Operations and Client Optimization, will be sent to you in the coming months. By providing 2 complimentary episodes, we aim to show you the value of spending 30 to 45 minutes with us in a one-on-one situation. A specific ALHI advisor will be on each webcast. And starting in January 2025, we will move to a subscription series of 8 webcasts, each featuring a different advisor. In 30 to 45 minutes, we will drill down on an area of the advisor's expertise to help move your needle on the challenges that impact your property's success and revenues. The series will run every other month roughly, and the subscription entails you to live access so that if you would like to join the 30 to 40 minute webcast live and ask questions, you can. You will also receive the webcast taped, so you could share it with your leadership team or an ownership group. If you can't join the live webcast, we will take advanced questions from you via email. And so I let you know there are a lot of ways to really ask a question of our advisor. You'll receive a list of when they're going to be and what advisor will be talking to me and what they're going to talk about in advance. So just stay tuned for more information coming your way. Today, our ALHI advisor is Karen Richardson. She is the founder of Richardson Talent Solutions. And it is, Karen, so lovely to have you here today. And so where I want to begin, if you don't mind, is really having you tell our members a little bit about yourself and your career. So take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here with you, Layla. So, to give you a little bit of purview into my background, my education was finance, and my first role out of college was actually in finance. And so I have that financial foundation, which I think is important as I, transitioned into kind of the next phase of my career, even though that was a short phase. As I transitioned into HR, what I really liked was the ability to use data for people matters. And that's how really, when I realized that there was that connection, that was what sparked my interest in human resources. I was working for General Electric at the time. I was started in finance with them, transitioned into HR through the help of a couple of mentors, which are still, fabulous, helpful folks to me today, but helped me transition into HR. And I spent almost 30 years at GE, a bit in finance, most in HR. Majority of my time, really kind of the last 15 years, in leadership and executive development. I did a variety of things before that time. I was a generalist. I spent a time in compensation. I spent time in a variety of different HR pillars. But when I got to leadership development, the spark was really there. I loved doing that. I loved helping people kind of be their best, and doing that with data, again, as kind of my background and my foundation. But to me, that was very exciting. And in a company like General Electric, there were so many different opportunities that I could stay there for 30 years and do a lot of different things. When I decided to leave General Electric, I did a bit of, I'll call it soul searching. Do I really love executive development? Is leadership development where I want to spend the remaining time in my career? And the answer was yes. I went through an entire 6-month process. We don't need to go into kind of what I did, but I went through a real soul search, decided that I do love leadership development, and so started my own firm. As you said, that was never part of my plan. Once I figured out that I was leadership development was where I wanted to be, I thought I would get a traditional job like GE. But a couple of different people said, "Hey, can you help me with this type of leadership issue that I'm having? Hey, we have something going on with our executive team. Can you help us?" So I started an LLC just to be able to do that legally, of course. And one thing led to another. And 5+ years later, I continued to do that, which is exceptionally fun for me. And part of what I've been doing over the last year and a half is being an advisor for Strategic Advisory Group, which has been very fun for me and interesting. I like to participate in different industries, and that opportunity is provided here as well. So that might be more than you wanted, Layla.
No.
You knew some of that probably through our relationship in the past, but thought I would lay that out.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you have a expertise in finance because it's your degree, and then you did a bit of that. And it's so we tend not to link an HR, a talent management person, with a financial background. And so I think as I listened to you, I thought that really brings you a unique perspective because you clearly understand the bottom line and what is the return on investment in talent management, or I don't know if what's the right, it could be how do you measure it. And so maybe that's where we should begin, because talent management is a major focus of leadership in hotels today, our members. And it is not always something that warms the cockles of their heart, if I could say that. And because it is episodic and systematic and cyclical, all those things rolled into one. And so from your perspective, what aspect right now is the focus of your clients' needs, whether they're in hospitality or in other industries?
Right. Well, what I would say is the number one challenge is attraction and retention of employees. And that is regardless of industry, to your point, regardless of region, size of company, all of the different metrics, people are having trouble getting people in the door for sure. But then they're also having trouble retaining people. And there was a recent survey that was done of companies that had 1,000 employees or more, and between attraction and retention, the 75% of the company said those are the two biggest issues that they are having. The economy, wage inflation, those were some of the others, but getting people in the door and keeping them in the door, because you and I have had conversations before about the cost of losing employees. It's not just the replacement cost. There are many other costs that are associated with it. And now understanding my finance background, maybe that's why you understand I talk in numbers a lot.
Well, and I'm not giving short shrift to the attraction part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to, though, however, focus on what you said about retention. And is there, and I'm putting you on the spot so you can redefine this any way you want, but is there a general problem, or a more often than not, this is why they're not retained?
Yes.
Is that a fair question?
It is a fair question, and the answer is it's actually quite a big reason, and it's the employee experience that really is why people do not stay. But when you talk about employee experience, that includes, that's the gamut. That's from attraction to when they leave. I mean, it's the whole life cycle. And, we can certainly talk through, what those different parts are, but it is so important that an employee feel that they are being treated fairly, that they are being given the opportunities that they deserve and want. And those are two very different things. What people want and what they think that they deserve, because we can talk through kind of when you promote people and when you develop people, and how that sort of happens. But the teamwork and collaboration, the way you assess people, the rewards that people are given. A lot of companies believe, well, the way to keep an employee is to pay them more. And certainly that is important, and we care about that. Everybody cares about their, the economics of their job, but that is such a small piece of the employee experience. And, if somebody's going to be offered 20% more to go somewhere else, they're likely going to go regardless of what, what employee experience you're providing them. So you just need to keep those sort of things in mind, as you think about how to keep people within your organization.
I love what you said about all of that, but I want to hook on to something. You talked about the life cycle of the employee experience. And then you said a part of that is pay, salary.
Sure.
Okay. We understand. Okay. But it's not the biggest thing. So in thinking about that, if you were going to start a business, a hotel, and you were thinking about the employee experience, is there one aspect overall, I know, overall others, that you would ensure lived in your business? I know I'm asking you to pick a favorite kid.
Right. Well, and actually, I'm going to go a little bit outside the bounds of that question. And what I would say is listening. What I see in every industry, every region, every size of company is that if you listen to your employees, then your employee experience is going to be so much better. You don't have to, you ask your employees what they want, why they want it, how they want it. And you can't do all of those things. We know that. But you can say, here are the, pick a number, 3 things that we heard that we are going to do. There are other things that you all are interested in. We understand that. We can't do it all. And here's why we can't. So listen, act, communicate. Those 3 pieces are so linked, because if you just listen and don't do anything about it, then doesn't help you at all. But that really is where I would suggest people start. I call it the human-centered employee experience, because it's the employee. Obviously that it is centered around them, but everybody has needs and wants and desires. So treat them like a human being. And it seems so basic, but not all companies do that.
So as you were talking, I thought to myself, is she referring to informal listening or formal?
Yes, is my answer.
Okay. Well, all right. I don't think we need to explain informal, but what do you, and the reason I'm thinking about this is, we have members who have properties with less than 100 employees, some even less than 50, and then we have others that have hundreds of employees. So you're not saying to anyone, talk to each employee individually about everything. So give me some tips for formal listening.
Yep. So certainly there are surveys. We all have them. We all receive them. There are a couple of ideas around surveys that I think help people do it in a more palatable way, because big surveys provide a lot of data and then you have to do things with them. But you can have a bite-sized survey where it's just a couple of questions once a month, once a quarter, once a fill in the blank, to pulse check your employees on how they're feeling about a topic. Doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be formal. It can be very light. There are also roundtables, brown bag lunch. Lots of people do lunch and learns. I'm sure that's a term that many people are familiar with. Just getting your folks together, whether you're a company that has 50 employees and once a month you offer to have everybody, kind of sit down, or if you're virtual, do one of these. And you have one topic that you're going to ask for information about. Sometimes there are cultures that are less interested in being transparent and sharing that information. So a survey would be more appropriate in that manner than a lunch and learn, or when people might not feel as comfortable sharing their viewpoints up front. I am a proponent of surveys, but they have to be infrequent and light, because survey fatigue is a real thing where people, I got one last month. Why in the world are you asking me again? So that's part of it. And then one more, I see you kind of, but let me say one more thing.
Okay.
And the informal listening is really important, that, people do share what they are thinking and feeling, and asking that next question, that double click question about, kind of, oh, why did you say that? Or what makes you think that? Or how, is there something that made you feel that way? And then ensuring that that data gets to the appropriate person, whether it be the leader of that person, the HR person, or the leader of the organization. It doesn't always have to be the HR person. A lot of times it's, well, everything has to go through the HR person. They're the ones that take care of that. That's not the case. And in smaller organizations, there isn't always a human capital, human resources type person. So with that, I'll take a breath. Layla, I'm sorry. That I get on a roll.
No, I think you had some very vital information, but I'd like to pare it back a bit.
Yes.
And so, this is what takes a strategic plan. That has to be discussed and thought, and everybody, and by that I mean leadership, needs to understand their role. That's what you're telling me, so that they then can talk to their direct reports. Hey, when you hear something from one of your team members, here's how you got to communicate that. And all this. My question though is, and it may not be as important as you think another, but, and it's not just the hotel industry I'm referring to here, it's any business. It varies how interested the leader is in talent management. And so some just want it taken care of. Others of them actually want to be an HR person. I mean, but most of it comes in the middle. They're just a little, yeah. So if I'm the head of your talent management, I'm a client of yours, what do you suggest I do to really get my general manager, my owner, to be vested in this strategy?
Yes, I think I'll say two things. One is, you mentioned the strategic plan, and it starts there. So looking at what your employee experience currently is, because there are going to be some things that you're really good at, some things that you're less good at, some things you probably aren't even thinking about. That's okay. That is to be expected. Take that where you are, and then look at your strategic plan. What in that employee experience is most important to make better for your organization? How is that going to more effectively hit your bottom line?
Okay.
Because, as I said, I'm a numbers person. Companies that have a really solid employee experience 40% less turnover. So you go to your leader with, I've looked at the strategic plan. I've compared it to our employee experience. Here are the things that I think would be most valuable to spend some resources on, whether that's time or money. And so you take that one piece and then you add in the data behind it, the 40% less turnover. Also, when you have a really great employee experience, people are likely to give 95% discretionary effort versus 55% discretionary effort. Sales are twice. Customer loyalty is twice. So those sort of things are going to help a leader think, yeah, I better do a little investment here. Might be some money, might be some time, but I should invest because my sales are going to go up. My customer loyalty is going to go up. My turnover is going to go down. My discretionary effort's going to go up. And therefore my profits are. So that's how I deal with my clients, helping them understand the why and then the numbers behind them.
So what you've just done is, in my mind, you've talked to a general manager or other members of the executive team who aren't in talent management about the ROI. And because that is so important, rightly so, but we often don't have those hard numbers to either put in front of our boss or for our boss to put in front of their boss. And so I want to be clear on this. Because of your background, you can help any of our members develop, shall we say, the infrastructure of an ROI relative to talent management. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I think part of the struggle you mentioned earlier, people have different varying degrees of interest, we'll say, that what I see is that people make really two big mistakes. One is that they are thinking that they can just, whatever I've done before, I can continue to do, my action or inaction. I'm just going to continue. And my results are going to be different.
Yeah.
We all know that's not the case, but people do it every day of the week. That's kind of number one. And then number two is, and you and I have had this conversation before. I call it the lift and shift. Taking a successful practice from somebody else and saying, gosh, company XYZ is doing this really well. I'm going to do that exact same thing in my company. And that almost always ends up poorly because the strategic plan is different. What is working well in your company is different. It's not a bad concept to say, gosh, there's a best practice out there. Let's use that, but we have to use it in the way that is right for our organization. And that's the piece that people miss, because it's easier just to say, XYZ does it, we're going to do it.
Yeah. And it's very interesting when I think about that. There are actual examples in our industry of brands that do well with the employee and customer experience. And so they teach their way. And people wonder why it doesn't work the same way. And so that's it exactly. And I think that's a very valid point for people to remember. You can't just plug and play, even though we would like to. Something else, if you could, you talked about explaining why a property can't do something in the form of benefits, perhaps, in the form of virtual versus physical time, those kind of things. And what do you say then to a leader who, I'm going to call it old school, doesn't believe they have to share that kind of information, doesn't believe you want a job, you work it, if you will. I sometimes myself can be old school. I'll say things in my head, you have to be kidding me, because that isn't the approach I was raised in. That, however, that doesn't get me very far today. So what do you say to me and others like me?
Right. Well, what I generally do is a little bit of research because, we all know that different generations want different things. And in almost every company industry, you have a variety of different generations, hence the need to listen. But what I often do is go out and find the most recent research on why it is important to listen to the different generations and listen to the different types of people, because regardless of what generation you're in, there are people that want the same thing in different in
That's
different
right.
generations.
Yeah.
But showing if you continue to go down the path, and whether it's ignoring talent management, whatever it is, here is the likely outcome. We know that people are not joining companies that are old school, to use your term, which I use in my head a lot as well. But we know that it is harder to attract individuals to organizations that are stuck in the past. We certainly don't use the same cell phone that we had 5 years, 7 years ago. Why would we use the same talent practices? That's one of the things I say a lot, because we want, the world is progressing, the world is changing. I mean, that's a reality, more quickly than it ever has. So we need to keep up with that. We need to keep up with the practices for our employees, because there are others that are. So they are going to go to other places
Yeah.
if the opportunity and the experience is better. It's not just the money, but it's the way I'm treated and it's the way I feel. And I know that a lot of old school people, that whole feel is not part of their vernacular and want
It's
to
your job.
acknowledge. Exactly. Right. I'm paying you, therefore you should. And that's just not the way to find and keep people. And so
So,
again, I go back to the
yeah.
data. Sorry to
No,
interrupt
no,
you.
no. I loved I loved your analogy about the cell phone. And it makes a lot of sense because what we're talking about in essence is change.
Mhm.
The leader has to change, the employees have changed. Love it, doesn't matter. It's the same thing with the cell phone because I can remember I loved my BlackBerry.
Oh, I did too.
You
Oh,
too.
I
Oh, I'm
did
so
too.
glad.
Oh, I
Yeah.
did. I
And
resisted for a long
oh,
time.
me too. And then it was like I was a Luddite, with
Mhm.
so, but it helps me to relate to things when in the back of my head I go, oh, please. So thank you for that. I do want to give you an opportunity to provide any piece of advice you want our members to have. And so you have your pick of anything. It's up to you.
Wow. Um, I think that my biggest advice would be, regardless of the size of your organization, to, and of course I'm keeping listening aside because I've said that a lot.
Mhm.
I would say that training your leaders to be able to provide feedback and to coach people with that feedback is a really wise investment, because as I said, listening, that's certainly a part of it, but having the skill to give an employee feedback, not just the good, it's easy to give good feedback, but give constructive feedback. Okay, here's what you aren't doing well,
Mhm.
here's how you can do it differently, and here is how things will change for you if you do things differently. So ensuring that the leaders can have those conversations and help coach employees, that one piece, in addition to listening, will elevate the employee experience exponentially. That's really where if I had a few dollars, that's where I would spend it.
So I'm going to pick you because I don't know. So you yourself, I have an executive team, and I know we don't do well providing feedback that is not positive.
Mhm.
I'm going to put it that way.
Yeah.
I know we don't do well having direct conversations.
Mhm.
I also know some of my leaders are not good listeners. They want to fill the air up rather
Mhm.
than, but so pick any of those three, all of them. Is this something you do? Helping develop coaching or a program on being able to give feedback regardless of what type it is.
Absolutely. The first example that comes to mind is a client of mine, which is Louis Vuitton. And they have a couple of different leadership teams, in the United States where they both had trouble listening. So they asked me to come in and, help us understand what the issue is. We think that it's listening, but let's do a little diagnostic. So we did. I went in, interviewed everybody, really understood what the good, the bad, and the opportunity, I like to say it like that, is with the organization or with the team, excuse me. And, listening was at the crux of it. So we spent a couple of days really working on listening. How do you listen? Why do you listen? When do you listen? What isn't listening? We spent a couple days, and then a few months later, I came back and we worked on feedback, providing feedback, coaching their employees. Did a lot of practice, and that's super uncomfortable. People don't want to do that, but we all know that practice is how you get better. So we absolutely did that. Did it in a very safe space among the group, so that they could go out and have some confidence, because that's a big part of being able to provide feedback well, is having confidence in your skills. So I upskilled them on providing feedback and a light touch on coaching, because feedback is, the lines blur. So spent a couple of days doing that, and I'm going back kind of for a different module with them in a couple of more months. And that's the way I like to work. Let's work on X, give you a chance to practice it in your day-to-day job. I'll check in, do any upskilling we need, things that didn't quite catch. And then we're going to move on to the next thing. Because if you do it in bite-sized chunks, it is much more likely to take hold. And part of what I like to do is, ensure that there's follow-up, because we've all been through training. Well, gosh, that training was great. I'm going to put that in the drawer, and I'm going to go back to my job, and I'm going to be my regular old self. And that's, then you've just wasted money and time. So.
And I couldn't agree more with everything you said, and I'm not the expert, but I do understand how we provide training and feedback, and then, as you say, they leave and it goes in a drawer. So your process, I think, immediately addresses that issue. So for anybody looking for assistance, I will also say this to support your contention, which I just happen to know. Millennials getting constructive feedback is extraordinarily important. That doesn't mean they don't want praise, but they don't just want praise. They want to know how to get better. And so it's very, and that doesn't mean I'm a boomer. That doesn't mean I don't want to know how to get better, but I'm more used to not really getting praise, or, getting it once a year. And so it's such a useful tool to be able to help someone develop.
Well, interesting that you talk about the receiving, because when I do training on feedback, I actually start with how you receive feedback rather than how you give feedback, because it's so important to understand that it is human nature. Your brain doesn't want it, your ego doesn't want it. Your body has a visceral reaction to negative feedback. That's just human nature. So understanding that is the first piece of the training. And then, okay, once we understand that, what can we do to reduce the fear of the person on the receiving end? So understand what it is. Let's reduce the fear. And now let's talk about how to give that feedback.
You know, Karen, I have to tell you, our time is up, but it's been absolutely wonderful. And in my role, I'm the lucky one because I get to learn from you. And I really appreciate it. And the fact that you've given not only me, but I think others who will listen to this, a different way to think about what they're doing with their employees, what their approach is. Is it strategic? Is it thoughtful? And so I want you to know I truly appreciate your time. And so, in closing out today, I want all of you to know that you will receive additional information on our webcast. This webcast and one from Armine will be coming to you, as I said, complimentary in your email box over the next couple of months. And so, if you found this session worthwhile, just contact me at Layla@alhi.com. And my first name is LALIA at ALHI.com. And if you want to get on the phone quickly and talk about what Karen can do for you, and I'll make a connection for you, I'm delighted to do that. And so as I close out today, I'm already looking and saying, my gosh, it's almost 2025. And so what we want to do at Strategic Advisory Group is really provide down-to-earth, practical ideas and solutions to issues that you grapple with. So until you hear from us about our subscription service that the webcast will go to in 2025, we will feature 8 advisors, each 30 to 45 minutes. You'll receive much more information on this. I ask that you stay well, and thank you for joining us, and take care.